Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind, or Vento Aureo, whichever you prefer, episode 26. So yeah, we're here with another episode of JoJo this week, and yeah, I'm as hyped as I can be. Last episode the last two episodes, we got the debut of Spice Girl, the stand of Trish. And it's good to see Trish coming into her own as a character. Because prior to this, she kind of felt more like, I wouldn't say really a plot device, but she just didn't feel important enough. Okay, that's also the wrong way of putting it. She was definitely important to the story. She didn't feel like a character. Let's put it that way. She just didn't feel like a character yet. She didn't have much to her. There was a hint of a little more coming, but we hadn't seen anything yet until last episode. She started to get more of a personality, more character traits, and I'm actually really liking what they're doing with her. And I hope that they continue to make her more like this and less like they used to. I want her to kind of become one of the gang, one of the group. And I think that would be just really appreciated at this point. But yeah, so there's still quite a few things that we have to question here. Quite a few things that we don't fully know what's going to happen. Because there's still a character in the intro we have yet to meet. There's probably going to still be quite a few different stand users, but the boss said it last time at the end that he was going to try to take matters into his own hands. Now that could mean a number of things, to be fair. That could mean quite a few different things. Is he going to send someone directly, like a lot more directly? Is he going to actually get into the action himself? I don't know. Is he, like, maybe he'll send his top man, the one who I assume is the one in the intro, the one who like had made the call out at the end of the one episode after Bruno and them had betrayed him and all. There's a lot of options, and we'll just have to kind of see. But yeah, so I think I also mentioned last time how this series keeps proving me wrong, and I want to cover that again real quick. Because when I was starting out, and even during you could say the first half of this series so far, I was kind of on the wheel like, okay, this is good. I'm enjoying this, but it just can't live up to part 4. And I still think part 4 is better. But I definitely think that this keeps proving me wrong, and it's actually a lot better than I gave it credit for in the past. Now there's still a few things that I'm not as happy about the way they're doing it so far. I still think that Fugo is kind of playing a back role at the moment. Even with him having stayed in I guess you could say in the good graces of the boss. He just really has not had a time to truly shine as a character. And I do believe that will happen. I do, but it just feels like they just don't know what to do with him right now. And I know that's more on the manga's the manga author's original intents and stuff too, but still, it just feels like at this point, even in the manga, if this is as accurate as it can be, which I think I've heard that it's extremely accurate, so even at this point in the manga, it would still mean that Fugo is just not being done enough with. Narancia's had a couple great moments to shine. We've had great stuff from Giorno and Bruno. We've even had with Trish now, and to a lesser degree, Abakio. But he should have a little more too. It just feels like they're just not doing anything with Fugo. So it's like I'm just wondering exactly where that's going to go. Hopefully we'll get more with that soon. And on top of it, it doesn't seem like there's as there's as much just general enjoyment as part 4 had, for me personally. Part 4 was just really just generally fun to watch. With all the excitement, the weird stuff going on, the bizarre stuff, you could say. Um, all the fascinating and likable characters. I mean, Kira, for one, is, again, favorite JoJo villain for a reason. And one of my favorite villains in all of anime. And it's just like, part 5, it's like, the boss is cool, but he just doesn't leave as much of an impression as either Dio or Kira. He's just not as good of a villain so far. And he might end up being a great villain, but right now it's just he's not quite there. He's not bad, but yeah, he's not quite where I would want him to be for a JoJo villain. And I get part of the entire thing with his character is the mystery about who he is and all. But still, it feels like it's not quite there. And on top of it, our main character, Giorno, is probably, as of this point, I would have to say, even though I like him, he's the weakest JoJo. Like Jonathan, Joseph, Jotaro, and Josuke, all of them are more just likable and enjoyable to watch. And it seems like they have almost a bigger role as well. Because let's be honest, Giorno's role in the series overall is not that big. I mean, Bruno feels more like a main character than him. Giorno basically, it's like, oh, he's inspiring people in the background, and occasionally he'll steal their kills or just kind of randomly do something. But most of the attention is on, honestly, the other members of the group. And mostly, honestly, it's mostly been Mista, Bruno, and Narancia. Those three have probably had the most notable and noteworthy attention of any of the members of the group. Giorno hasn't done much of anything. Like, even in Stardust Crusaders, with Jotaro, who previously was my least favorite JoJo, even he did more. And he even had points where he just wasn't doing as much, and the other Crusaders were much more heavily focused on. But it's like, compare that to like Jonathan and Joseph, and it's like they were constantly the focus. Yes, there were other great characters that accompanied them, but they were constantly the focus. Josuke, while he did share a lot of the focus with other characters like Koichi and Rohan and Okuyasu, he was definitely still a major focus in it and always felt like the main character. Even with Jotaro and Joseph, previous JoJo's also being in part 4, he still always felt like the main character. Like he was always the most and main focused character. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't feel that way for JoJo, or for Giorno here. He's just not that interesting. I mean, I like his goal. I like his goal of trying to get to the top in order to stop drugs from being sold to kids and stuff. That's a very noble and fantastic mission to have. And I do like his personality and the way he handles things. I like Gold Experience as a stand. But I just compared to the other JoJo's, while he definitely has more personality than Jotaro, he's just not as entertaining and fun to watch, and he just doesn't have as much to do, it seems. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, it's just, as of now at least, he's just probably my least favorite. Which is funny, because this part also has my favorite JoJo character, just period, in it with Narancia. So it's kind of funny that it has my favorite JoJo character, period, but my least favorite JoJo. And the thing is, throughout pretty much every part, almost, okay, well, at least most of the parts so far, my favorite character is usually never actually the JoJo. Like with part 1, it was Speedwagon. Part 2 is the one where my favorite character actually was the JoJo with Joseph. Um, or no. Do I like Joseph or Lisa more? Because I really love both of them. I'm not actually... Which one do I like more? Sometimes I debate about that. I did a top 10 JoJo characters list. You can go check that. That was... Just use that as a reference. I don't even remember which one I put higher on that list at the moment. But one of those, at least. So I think he had, either way, had the most chance of being number 1. And then it's like, my favorite overall character from, like, part 3, I think was, like, Kakyoin. At least of the Crusaders, it would probably be Kakyoin. And then part 4 was Kira. I mean, for sure. And so it's like, and yeah, now part 5 is Narancia. But yeah, it's just, he's just my least favorite JoJo so far. And I think I've mentioned before, but I'll mention it here again. I do know who the JoJo for the part 6 is. I actually do know who it is. I've seen pictures of them. I know their name. That's all I will say. For those of you who don't know, I won't give away that stuff as spoilers, but I do know the name, and I do know what they look like. I don't know anything else about them, but I do know that much. But I am excited still for this series and to see how it deals with like the final 13 episodes it's got left. And yeah, I guess we're gonna find out in this episode what happens with the boss handling things on his own. Again, is it going to be like legitimately just handling things himself? Or is it going to be more on the lines of like, oh, he's going to directly influence what's going on by like specifically sending like his top man or something like that? I don't know. We'll find out. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the links to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So the boss's identity is revealed. Sort of. It's complicated. So we find out that he was apparently born in 1965. His mother was this woman who was in a woman's prison for a 10-year sentence. She had been there for 2 years already and suddenly became mysteriously pregnant. No one knows how it happened, and the only guy she had apparently ever been with had died 2 years ago. Presumably could be the reason she's in the prison. Maybe she killed him, I don't know. But definitely some mysterious circumstances behind his birth. And I kind of made the reference to Umbrella Academy. If you don't know, that's kind of the just general synopsis behind the backstory of Umbrella Academy, the Netflix series and book by Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance. I've only seen the first episode of the series, but I do... that's just the basic synopsis of it. Just a bunch of kids were suddenly born to women who were not pregnant when they woke up that morning. They just suddenly became pregnant and gave birth like right then and there, and it's just these mysterious circumstances and all. And it's kind of the same thing here. This woman was not pregnant before. She just suddenly became pregnant and gave birth to a child. So we find out this child was this pretty likable guy, but ended up somehow getting a hold of his mother, putting her under the floorboards in the home of the priest who had taken care of him. And then he just killed everyone, and 7 people died and everything, and that was years and years ago. And so now he's kind of living under these new personalities. And I actually do not think either of them are his true, like, original personality per se. Because we got two specific ones at least here. I mean, kind of three, actually, if you think about it. We have Doppio, we have the boss, and then we kind of have one that's kind of in between. Um, so Doppio's personality, he's very timid, he's very scared, he's very just uncertain about how to handle everything. He apparently appears to be kind of, you could say, the right hand of the boss, um, and is probably the voice that we heard at the end of that one episode, the one who had called out everything on uh, Bruno's gang and all. So he's very timid and everything, but he's smart at the same time, and he definitely seems to have a care for animals and stuff. At least for a frog and a bug that we saw. But we see that under certain stresses and stuff, he'll get like this headache, and then his personalities will switch. We see that it usually happens in a certain pattern. First, his personality goes to more of the mix between, the kind of in-between personality, which is just an extremely ultra-violent personality, extremely, like, angry and just kind of crazy in a way. Oh, excuse me. Just this personality that's just like kind of pure rage in a way. But then it will eventually evolve into an even further personality, which is the boss. And when he goes into the boss personality, his muscle mass actually increases. His face actually notably changes. Like, they made a point of telling us that. And they didn't even show his face at that point. But his face does notably change. His voice changes as well, as we saw. So it's really, really interesting that he actually changes that drastically. And I mean, maybe that has something to do with his stand with King Crimson, or maybe it's just has something to do with the mysterious circumstances of his birth that we don't even fully understand yet. Could his birth, just his mysterious birth, be linked to another stand in its own right? It's always possible. But yeah, and the fact that he even, when he was born, he came out of the womb, his eyes open already, and no crying or anything, but perfectly alive and all. It's just like, it's so weird. But yeah, so we see, like, Doppio is like kind of this nice guy, but he still follows the boss's orders, though. He is part of Passion. But he is not in any way aware of the split personality, and I don't know if the boss is either. But we see he has this weird little tick sometimes whenever the boss personality specifically wants to, like, subconsciously communicate with the Doppio personality. He starts doing this weird thing where he starts making ringing noises, and the Doppio personality thinks there's a phone nearby. And then he'll just grab some random inanimate object or some kind of, like, animal or something and use it as a phone. We saw he did it with a rear view mirror ornament of the taxi driver, and then he did it with a frog as well. And it's kind of the way that his personalities communicate with each other. Now, split personality disorder is a real thing. It is a very real thing. It's been used in a lot of different media, a lot of shows, a lot of movies, video games, all of that kind of stuff, books. It is a very real thing. I don't know exactly how realistic this portrayal is. Like, I don't know, like, I don't honestly and admittedly know, like, a lot about the disorder. So I don't know if this portrayal is, like, is true. Like, I don't know if, like, with split personality, with people who really have this in real life, I don't know if, like, a headache can be a sign of the personality switching. I don't know if the personalities do or do not have consciousness of each other. I do not know how any of that works, really. I just don't. Obviously, I know that the physical changes isn't real, but you know what I mean. Um, so it's really fascinating to me, and the fact that this is a villain that our main villain that has this too. It's like, that's so interesting, because compare that to the other villains we've had in this series. Part one had Dio, and he was like, really, honestly, probably pretty normal at first. He was kind of an asshole and everything, and a complete dick, but he was normal. He was a poor son who was constantly the victim of horrible actions against him. His father was complete scum and drove his mom to an early grave and stuff. And even though Speedwagon kind of implied that he was just born evil, it is also very much implied that maybe it was at least spurred on by his circumstances. And then part two had the Pillar Men, which were these supernatural beings. So it's like they're kind of completely removed away from this thing. But even so, they acted very normal still, very human in a way. Part three, of course, Dio returned, and you had to deal with him again. And he was a much more powerful enemy with the world and everything now, but it was still basically the same character. And part four has Yoshikage Kira, the most human of the villains, but also still just kind of a normal guy, in all things considered. No, like, big, special, really super unique character traits that really, like, makes him come across as bizarre as a character. Other than, you know, his hand fetish. Which, I mean, people have weird fetishes like that in real life. So, that, again, it's even not like that's super weird. I mean, it is super weird, but you know what I mean. And again, split personality disorder is definitely something that real people do have, but it's something that you don't really see in this kind of context a lot. Like, you'll see it, again, in different media, but not usually in the context of a main villain having it. And not even seemingly being aware of having it. It's just fascinating to me. And this episode focused entirely on him as well. Like, the only bit that we saw of our main heroes, of Bruno's gang, was Narancia's Aerosmith flying around doing some scouting. That's it. It was focused pretty much entirely on Doppio / the boss. And we did get Rosato returning, though. And we're starting to see more of what his stand can do. And it's freaky as all hell. But it's like, I want to know more. I want to know what is actually happening here. I want to, like, get the details behind this stand. And it's interesting that the boss and Doppio are facing Rosato rather than our main heroes. That's interesting. So I assume the next episode is going to also kind of continue this with Doppio and the boss taking on Rosato. And kind of as I said as well, I don't think that either of these personalities are the original. In fact, if I were to say, I would say that that the original personality was the one that he was originally. And then during that event, all those years ago, when he set the house on fire and everything and killed all of those, the 7 people in total, well, technically 6, because he kind of killed himself. He faked his own death in a way. I think that instead of like dying there, that's when his personality split. That's when because I think beforehand he was one of those bad guys, one of those horrible people who was horrible but put on this mask of a nice person, like not like another personality, but rather uh, just a public mask in a way. So I think that that's kind of what that was going with there. That he's just putting on this mask, this pretend facade. But then when all of that happened all those years ago, both of those personalities, the fake one he put on in the public eye, as well as his real personality, his more evil one, split. And that's what created Doppio and the boss. I might be completely wrong about that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Um, but yeah, this is going to be interesting to see where this goes from here on out. How are they going to defeat Doppio and the boss? I really have no idea where this is going at this point. But I'm actually glad for that. It's really fascinating. It's really, well, for the title's sake, bizarre, and it's just really really cool in a way that they're doing it in such a unique manner. Um, I wonder if we're ever going to find out the exact circumstances of his birth. I wonder if we're going to ever have a point where one of the personalities just takes over for a longer period of time or just completely. That can happen too with split personality disorder, where a personality can actually take control and not necessarily the original personality. um, so it's really interesting. Um, yeah, I have no idea where this is going to go. I assume the next episode is going to focus, like I said, on Doppio and the boss taking on Rosado still, and then after that we'll get back to our main heroes. But other than that, I'm just like in shock about all of this. And we still didn't see his face when he transformed into his boss personality. Like noted, his appearance just overall changes when he goes into that personality. His physical features like legitimately change. He gains more muscle mass and his face notably changes. That was made very clear in the fact that they hid his face in the shadows still at that point. Now, before when we had seen the boss as well, his hair looked like it was short, like it was shaved or something, but maybe it was just really slicked back. Because as we see with Doppio, his hair, yes, he has that like long thing flying up in the front, but he also has it tied back. Like it's like bunched up and tied back in the back. So it's very possible it could have been slicked back and like tied together back there. Um, like the last time we saw him when he was facing Bruno. And Doppio seems to have some control. That personality has control over King Crimson as well. But the way it was said, the way the boss personality said it, it almost seems like Doppio doesn't have full control of King Crimson. Like, almost like somehow that personality has only partial control, and probably not to as much of a degree. And we also see there are some certain triggers to his changing of personalities. As I mentioned before, there's the headaches, but there's also his eyes crossing. Whenever he changes personalities, whether going into that kind of in-between personality or to the bosses, his eyes will do this weird crossing thing. As if, well, to signify that he's changing, that he's switching over. And his eyes, while as the boss, are also notably different looking. So I am really just, there's a lot of questions this raises. a lot of questions that come along with this. But again, it's so fascinating that you're excited to see where they take this. You're excited to see what they do with it and to see these questions answered. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I can't wait to see what we get next. In the meantime, though, tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Vento Aureo, or Golden Wind if you prefer. What do you think of the big reveal of the boss's true identity? Sort of. What do you think of the return of Rosato? And what do you think of all these really interesting tics that Doppio / the boss have? And do you think that, what do you think about the idea of maybe his personality had split during that event all those years ago when he was younger? Tell me your thoughts on all of that and more in the comments below, but as always, no spoilers. If you know anything more about this character that is going to be revealed later on, do not tell me. If you know anything about this character regarding the use of his stand or his past or anything, do not tell me. I want to be blind. I want to be unspoiled on things going ahead in the future. So please, keep the comments spoiler-free. You guys have done that pretty well so far. But just continue to do so, please. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,